It is a member of Meteorot Navi's Zodiac, portraying herself with the symbolism and constellation of the Maiden. It is VRG00 Virgo, with a kit of Gunpowder Guard, Double Charge Plant, Wheeled Legs, and the leg ability of Shape Memory, which equalizes HP across all parts when charging Metaforce, and this will also restore broken parts when doing so a certain number of times. Now, we have actually seen Virgo previously up to this point in Story Mode Arc 3 of the game as a recurring enemy NPC, but she did not have her meta change form, which made her a little easier to tolerate and fight at that point. But now that she is officially debuting as a model that players can now pull for, she is now coming fully kitted out, ready to go and join the battlefield. Gunpowder Guard is a defense-based skill that, when on the field, will allow her to intercept all incoming blows a certain number of times. However, with the caveat of if it is a gunpowder-based skill, which is, say, missile or napalm or even hyper missile, or even meteor in very rare cases, it will be nullified at 0 damage. Charge Plant on both arms is basically a setup skill that, when put on the field, when charging Metaforce, you will get an additional 10% extra or so to complete the turn, which means it'll be a lot easier, say, when you get to that last-ditch effort of essentially just spamming Metaforce and hoping for a win. Charge Plant will definitely come in as a very nice clutch to save you on those extra turns that you're getting whenever charging. Shape Memory is honestly a very ironic ability and very well-fitting leg ability for Virgo as well, given of what she is able to transform into when she is officially, when she does choose to transform. But at face value, at a glance at where she is now, she is very dominantly a support defender kind of oriented kind of fighter. So even though with a defense-based skill, it does allow her to intercept blows and tank things for allies, Gunpowder Guard is definitely not the best there is, if I'm completely honest with you. There are definitely much better guards out there, especially for a head part no less. But on the other hand, Charge Plant does also have very selective use when, if you do need it on a team. And Wheeled Legs do give Virgo very solid mobility across the board, especially being at about 904, which is very nice and par for the core for Wheeled Legs. That does also serve as her biggest weakness, primarily in the fact that Wheeled Legs are the pickiest when it comes to being matched across terrains. Her other leg stats, though, actually are pretty nice, and her stats across the board, even in normal robot mode, aren't too shabby either. At about 4,500 HP for the head, about 3,100 per arm, about 4,500 HP for the legs, means she is actually moderately tanky, which actually does work to her advantage. And her leg stats are very nice too, at about a little over 1,000 each for her melee and her shoot resist, mobility of 904, and an evade of almost 1,200, which also is very nice for Wheeled Legs. Just to cop a couple of the weaknesses in particular that Wheeled Legs have pretty much at base. Now, Virgo, for those that have played Meteorot Navi previously, as will know, is capable of also a meta change form, where she essentially will melt into a puddle, just kind of putting it nicely, where essentially she doesn't necessarily change her kit out exactly, as she keeps the exact same skills and drives, but she changes out the skills being used. Drive A is Guard 500, which, in contrast to Gunpowder Guard, means that when tanking blows for allies, she will instead negate about 500 damage or so off the top and allow her to reduce just a little bit extra damage and keep her on the field longer. Drives B and C are Melee Trap and Shoot Trap, respectively, which means that when a trap is placed on the field, it will passively damage anyone that chooses to use that skill, as a way to serve as passive aggression and even potentially break parts once you can whittle them down enough, and even nullify a turn if you can time it right. She also changes her leg a type out from wheeled to sea leg, which will give her just a little bit more coverage across most terrains, and especially S rank on aquatic terrain, which very few have that mastery on. But her stats actually will go, well, I wouldn't necessarily say they go down, but they do kind of vary just a little bit. While her mobility will drop significantly from low 900s down to high 600s, her melee resist will go up significantly by about 200 points. Her shoot resist goes down just a little bit, but not by much, but her evade absolutely will jump the charts at over 2,000, which means when she's not dodging attacks, when she's not defending attacks, she's absolutely going to be dodging them. Naturally, in this form, personally, Virgo is much more versatile on the field, given that even though Guard 500 may not be super handy all the time, especially as a Drive A where if she loses her HP she's dead, Melee Trap and Shoot Trap actually are very nice to have, especially given that Virgo can shift change back and forth as she pleases without anything really getting in her way or having a charge requirement on any of her drives. In this form as well, she does also change her leg ability to Fortress, which also will grant her an even more so higher damage reduction when tanking attacks, which also will come in handy very much more so when she is using Guard 500. That being said, as a pure set score, I do honestly have to rate Virgo about a 6.5 out of 10. In very rare instances, or if a good argument is made, I probably could bump her up to a 7, given the fact that even though Charge Plant and Melee Trap and Shoot Trap are both very, very handy to make use of, her kit all around by itself is very mixed, I guess I can call it, given that even though the defense skill she has does actually give her an extra set of utility, with it being a head part or even a drive in this case, does honestly make it harder and even riskier in some places to use her without the risk of someone breaking her instantly or just as quickly. And in her meta change form, which she has a much higher damage reduction going in her favor, she is also greatly susceptible, of course, to anti-C, which will very easily counter most of her damage-reducing skills and cripple her just as easily as she would be on her own in regular wield form. As mixed parts, I unfortunately have to rate her much lower actually at about a 4.5 out of 10, given that even though Charge Plant is very handy and her wield legs honestly are very, very nice too, the weakness also lies in the fact that they are wield legs, given the fact that they are only good on, say, 2 terrains at best, and if you do choose to use her as mixed parts, you are kind of missing out on a lot of the chunk that makes Virgo actually worth using if you do decide to pull her.